Hey guys, check it out. I have something cool to show you guys today. This is a speaker enclosure. I bet you don't believe me. So I want to demonstrate for you. Alright, right here we have a speaker, no enclosure. Here's our cup. A little better, right? This is kind of an enclosure, but watch this. Okay. Enclosure. Now watch this. Listen to the difference.
The big subwoofers pump, whole town quiver. Loud music, lights, beat, creek, bank, shiver. Bass so heavy, moonshine, spill out jars. Country rap kings, we superstar here.
Now watch this. This is cool.
Kick up dust storm, subwoofers pound, wild like a cattle horn. Amps cranking hard, pound, wise drum. Bass shake the barn, you feel it in your thumbs. Truck bed rubber, cornfield.
Well, that's pretty. That's not much of a sound there, right? Watch this now.
Echoes in the hollow, make the coyote sob. Big subwoofers pump, whole town quiver. Loud music, lights, beat, creek, bass shiver. Bass so heavy.
But I wasn't lying when I said this one is an enclosure.
We superstar here.
Now why does that work so well, right?
The big subwoofers pump, whole town quiver. Loud music, lights, beat, creek, bank, shiver. Bass so heavy.
Let's discuss. All right, guys, there's a lot of math and a lot of geometry and a lot of crazy things going on. But number one, I am no mather. Two, I'm no geometer. But I'm pretty good at wrapping my head around fairly complex concepts and reducing them down to something that's more edible, which is what we do on this channel. So I've done videos about infinite baffles, and that's what we're working with here is a baffle. So when you take something like this little speaker and play it without a baffle, the sound waves that are produced by the very tiny vibrations of the high-pitched sounds can propagate. And they won't interfere with the ones from the back because they're so small. By the time they touch each other, they're mature. They can propagate out. There's not a cancellation effect. So in essence, taking a speaker out of an enclosure is like attaching a high-pass filter. This is essence a high-pass filter for this speaker, a physical one. Whenever the lower notes propagate, they actually manage to cancel each other out. As the lower that frequency gets, once it gets to the point where it's here, it can cancel. So that's why you don't get any low notes. Now you add this little ring here, and all of a sudden, those notes have to go a lot further to get to the back. And so you're able to play and reproduce the notes that make it to the edge of this baffle, right? So now you've lowered the cutoff point to your high-pass filter, essentially. And it pretty much works exactly like a high-pass filter. It allows highs to continue, and it, by physics, cancels out the lows that are lower than the size of this baffle. So whenever you take and put the driver in the cup with the baffle, now you've completely eliminated the possibility of sound waves from getting from here to here. Well, mostly. Also, whenever you have a speaker in an enclosure, whether it's sealed or ported, it doesn't matter. It builds up pressure inside the container. So as that sucker is moving, it's going to be trying to expand that container. In order to, for a subwoofer that's designed, or a speaker that's designed to operate in an enclosure, it's designed to operate in an enclosure of a specific size. The reason for that is the amount of air inside that enclosure is the right amount of acoustic spring for that sub or speaker to bounce off of and to operate within its perimeters. If you put a driver that's designed for that sealed environment, a specific amount of air volume, in an infinite baffle, it doesn't have that spring anymore, so it's just going to go and tear itself up. That isn't the same principle we're talking about here, though. The sub-enclosure essentially does two jobs. Number one, it creates the baffle so that the sound waves, the low sound waves, can't get to the back. And an infinite baffle is a baffle that goes all the way around. It's infinite. The second thing a subwoofer enclosure does is it creates an air spring for the driver. Now, you probably think, well, okay, so why not engineer the driver to where it doesn't need an air spring? That's exactly what a Q of like 0.707 is essentially a driver that doesn't need an air spring. But with a driver that doesn't need an air spring, you have other concerns. You can't put an air spring. If you add an air spring to it, it makes the Q go up. It's really complicated. The point is, they engineer the structure, the magnet, the cone, the surround, the spider of the driver to operate within a specific environment. And that environment may include a certain amount of airspace. And if you want to create an infinite baffle and contain it in a small area, like a subwoofer box, you end up inadvertently creating pressure inside that container. It's more of an accident. In order to take a baffle that would go on infinitely in all directions, right? You've got to eventually make it come back around on itself. When you do that, the amount of volume inside there is going to dictate how much pressure of a spring you're creating. So you have to put a driver in that is designed specifically for that amount of air volume before it can achieve a point to where its QTC is, I hope I got that right. Its QTC, I believe its QTC is around 0.707. A driver that has a QTS of 0.707 will, if you put it in this piece of foam here, even just this will actually bring that QT, that 0.707 up a little bit. So it'll have a slightly higher QTC in the end if you measure it. Not much, but it's there. It's measurable. So creating an infinite baffle isn't really... The only way to create an infinite baffle in a car is literally to vent the speaker outside with no restrictions for it to get there. So like if you cut a hole in the roof snap a subwoofer on it, you got yourself an infinite baffle inside there. But even in that scenario, the cone moving in the chamber of the car is still a chamber. That's restriction. That's some air spring. So that's even going to break the thing. So yeah, infinite baffles are complicated, as you can see. Whereas designing a speaker to fit in a set amount of airspace enclosure and operate is easy. And it's marketable. And that box can be sold, and millions of people can put it in different vehicles, and it can always deliver good results. Infinite baffle is infinitely complicated in application. And it's very difficult to market because there's so many variables that you can't plan for. It's so much easier to put it in the box. Anyway, I'm all over the place with this, but my point was I wanted you guys to be able to see something cool and maybe trigger some thoughts in your brain, get your brain wheels to moving, because that's what we do. That's what I do. This is my life all the time. My brain is always working on something like this. I just stick a little seed in there and it starts to grow. And then I go, oh, I understand it. I just understand it now. It all kind of snaps into place. And I'm like, I need to tell people about this. And that's where you guys come in. I know my explanation was crazy and all over the place and not entirely accurate, but the point is I wanted to plant the seed in your brain so that you could start thinking about it and get a basic fundamental understanding of what that is and how it works, because it's very cool. Anyway, guys, peace.